You admire them, you quote them, you built your values around them. But what if behind every great person you admire lies a secret you were never supposed to discover? We love to believe that good people are just good, that our heroes live above contradiction, untouched by ego, unaffected by flaws. They taught us how to lead, how to love, how to live with purpose. We quote them, teach our children about them. But behind every statue, speech, and sanitized story, there's a shadow we choose to ignore. Not to preserve history, but to preserve the illusion. Because we don't want to believe that the people we admire most might have also done things we'd never forgive in anyone else. This isn't a takedown, it's a reckoning. Because the moment we turn people into saints, we stop seeing them as people. We worship their triumphs, but erase their contradictions. We build pedestals so tall, no one dares look beneath them. But greatness without honesty isn't greatness at all. Today, we're unraveling the uncomfortable truth about the people we idolize. Because every name etched into the walls of history carries a duality we rarely examine. Justice with hypocrisy, compassion with cruelty, light with shadows. We're not here to cancel anyone. We're here to understand what real greatness looks like. Because if even the best among us are deeply flawed, what does that mean for the rest of us? Let's take a closer look. Let's start with someone we all grew up trusting and saw as one of the kindest. Fred Rogers, the voice of calm.
It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood.
A cultural dad who taught generations how to feel, care, and be themselves.
You don't set out to be rich or famous. What you set out to do is to be helpful.
But behind the sweater and smile was a man wrestling with conflict. A devout Christian, Rogers believed in kindness, but within strict boundaries, particularly around gender roles, emotional expression, and sexuality. He asked one of his black gay cast members to hide his sexuality, fearing it would hurt the show's image. The message of unconditional love had conditions. He encouraged emotional openness, but only the kind that felt safe. When tough topics like divorce or gender identity came up, he softened or sidestepped them. Afraid of disrupting the worldview his audience found comforting, he wasn't just shaping childhoods, he was curating morality, carefully, controllingly.
It's Tuesday. Have you been here for a long time?
I've been here long enough.
Characters and stories that didn't align with his ideals were cut. Because sometimes, kindness isn't just about care, it's about control. And that desire to protect a perfect image, it didn't stop at coworkers, it tears through families. Behind another beloved figure's genius for compassion was a man who turned cruelty inward at home. Charles Dickens gave us Oliver Twist, A Christmas Carol, and some of the most gut-wrenching portrayals of poverty and injustice in literary history. He was the voice of the voiceless, a man who spoke for orphans, workers, and the forgotten masses. But at home, he disowned his wife, spread false rumors about her mental health, and took custody of their children to punish her. He even tried to have her committed to an asylum. When that wasn't enough, he publicly humiliated her in letters to newspapers and began an affair with an 18-year-old actress. Later in life, he burned many of his personal letters, trying to erase evidence of who he really was. A man who wrote about broken families, broke his own. A man who cried for the oppressed, became an oppressor in private. Do we forgive the storyteller because the story moved us? That contradiction doesn't erase his art, but it asks us to separate the storyteller from the story. Dickens wrote for the downtrodden, yet ignored the pain closest to him. But what happens when someone speaks for the voiceless and silences entire peoples in the process? Our next figure fought to protect the land, while denying the humanity of those who lived on it. John Muir saved America's wild places. Yosemite exists today in part because of his advocacy. He founded the Sierra Club and pioneered environmentalism as we know it. But his version of untouched nature didn't include the people who lived there. Muir often described Native Americans as lazy and dirty. His vision of wilderness meant pushing indigenous tribes off their land, a legacy environmentalists are still reckoning with today. Even the Sierra Club, the organization he founded, later aligned with eugenicist thinkers and promoted policies that actively excluded people of color. The early environmental movement wasn't just about trees and rivers, it was also about control. He wanted to protect the earth by erasing its original caretakers. Even reverence for nature can become dangerous if it dehumanizes others. Can you love nature while denying the humanity within it? Muir's wilderness was shaped by who he chose to exclude, and that same question, who gets a voice and who doesn't, still echoes in today's media empires, especially when one woman's voice became loud enough to shape the world. Oprah is the queen of empathy. She taught millions how to heal from trauma, build self-worth, and believe in their power. She gave a voice to the unheard, a platform to the wounded, but she also gave platforms to frauds and charlatans. Dr. Oz, Dr. Phil, anti-vaxxers, pseudoscientists, and John of God, a spiritual healer she promoted for years, who was later convicted of sexually abusing hundreds of women.
Oprah's Leadership Academy, a school for girls in South Africa, has been hit with another scandal. Now 7 students have been suspended for allegedly harassing some other students.
She endorsed Jenny McCarthy's anti-vaccine crusade, helping spark a misinformation wave that led to real-world public health crises. And her promotion of The Secret, a belief that positive thoughts alone could cure disease or end poverty, blurred the line between empowerment and dangerous delusion. When you control the world's attention, what you amplify becomes more powerful than you know. Oprah didn't intend harm, but good intentions can still open the door to harm when paired with massive influence. When does a platform for healing become a megaphone for harm? Oprah's message was healing, but sometimes healing can be twisted into denial. And when it comes to denial, no institution has practiced it more faithfully than the one led by the next figure, whose gentle smile has done little to wash away generations of silence.
Buonasera.
Pope Francis is celebrated for softening the image of the Catholic Church. He talks about love, mercy, the environment. He hugs the disabled. He washes the feet of prisoners. He tweets,
Nos dice que no se puede servir a dos señores. O servimos a Dios o servimos a las riquezas.
But behind the kindness is continuity. He still upholds the Church's bans on female priests, same-sex marriage, and abortion. More troubling, he continues the long tradition of protecting the Church's image over confronting systemic abuse. He defended Bishop Juan Barros, who was accused of covering up child abuse, and only backtracked after public outrage. And while headlines praised him for being different, statistics show that abuse scandals and cover-ups continued under his watch, often with the same silence and protection as before. Francis may be different in tone, but sometimes tone is all that changes. If the tone changes but the silence remains, is it really progress? Francis gave a softer face to an old system, but even movements built to challenge power aren't immune to contradiction. One of history's greatest moral leaders, a man who preached love and justice, left his own shadows hidden in plain sight. Martin Luther King Jr. is a hero. That's not up for debate.
I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
But heroism doesn't make you immune to flaws. MLK had affairs. He cheated on his wife repeatedly. Women in the civil rights movement often said their voices were diminished, their roles minimized. More controversially, FBI memos claim King once witnessed and laughed during a sexual assault committed by a friend. The tapes remain sealed, and the FBI's motives were unquestionably political and racist. But even his allies acknowledge he was a deeply flawed man, one haunted by his own contradictions. He fought for justice on the national stage, but at home, he left silence, distance, pain. It doesn't make him less great, but it makes him more human, and maybe that's even more powerful. Like King, Mandela stood as a pillar of peace.
Our major weapon of struggle against apartheid oppression and exploitation is our people organized into mass formation of the democratic movement.
But the road to peace is rarely paved with purity. Before the statues, before the Nobel Prizes, there were bombs. And behind the smile of a reconciler was the resolve of a revolutionary. Nelson Mandela is the symbol of forgiveness. He spent 27 years in prison and came out with grace. He led South Africa into a new era without civil war or retribution. But early in his activism, Mandela co-founded the ANC's armed wing. Bombings were authorized, civilians died. He remained on the US terrorist watch list until 2008, and even after apartheid, Mandela praised authoritarian leaders like Fidel Castro and Muammar Gaddafi, raising questions about how far moral compromise should stretch for political alliances. His journey to peace began with violence. Was it justified? Was it necessary? That depends on who you ask. But it proves that even the world's most peaceful figures sometimes believe peace is earned through blood. Mandela freed a nation. But our next figure reshaped the entire world, not through politics, but through pixels. He changed the way we think, talk, and touch the world, even as he bruised the people closest to him. Steve Jobs changed everything: phones, music, design. He revolutionized the way we live.
You've got to be willing to fail. You've got to be willing to crash and burn, starting a company with whatever. If you're afraid of failing, you won't get very far.
But the same man who made beautiful things often treated people horribly. He denied paternity of his daughter Lisa, even with a 99.9% DNA match, forcing her mother onto welfare while he was a millionaire. He emotionally abused employees, screamed at interns, and was infamous for public humiliation. At Pixar, before it was a hit, he ruled with fear.
He got mad at me, and he said, you forced me to price it too high. I want to lower the price.
I witnessed his incremental changes from sweet, super bright, goofy guy into a ruthless, stunningly successful business tycoon.
It makes you wonder, is cruelty the cost of innovation, or just a choice people stop apologizing for once they succeed? So what do we do with all of this? Do we cancel our heroes, burn their books, pretend the good never happened? No, we do something harder. We stop lying to ourselves. No one's just good. No one's just bad. Every legend has a flaw. Every saint has a shadow. And the more we ignore that, the more likely we are to repeat their mistakes. Solzhenitsyn said, "The line dividing good and evil cuts through every human heart. That includes yours and mine." The real danger isn't imperfection. It's pretending it doesn't exist. Because when we turn people into gods, we stop holding them accountable. And when we excuse our own flaws with nobody's perfect, we stop growing. So here's the truth. You can admire someone and still question them. You can celebrate greatness without erasing the cost. And maybe the most powerful thing we can do is tell the whole story about them and about us. So who's someone you used to admire until you saw the full picture? Drop it in the comments. Greatness isn't about being perfect. It's about being honest. If you're tired of the sugar-coated version of history, hit subscribe. We're just getting started. Thanks for watching.